Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 17, I think that's right, of UK League Chat. This time, just me and Tom again. We've faced a couple of cancellations, so that's why we're just us two again. Sorry for anyone that was had their hopes up, but never mind. But it gives us a chance to, now that the regular season's over, kind of have a bit of reflection and go over our team and the split as well. And hopefully there might be some controversy. Let's see. Maybe some disagreements. Let's find out. But to begin with, we can't not talk about what happened in the final week. Obviously, we've got an idea now of who's in playoffs, and there weren't in the end any real upsets playoffs-wise. We got the four teams that were already the top four. Kind of hoped that M&M would make that push. Obviously, they had a really hard week anyway, and ended up, I think, actually like 3 games out. So it wasn't really close in the end. But there was still that risk, until that final week that Fnatic might not have made it. But
yeah, there wasn't. Yeah. There just wasn't much. Like it was weird because it had the potential to be something of like a 3-way tie.
Yeah.
And after the first day, that kind of just ended like immediately. And so the second day just felt a bit, just like I wouldn't say anticlimactic because of obviously what happened at the end, but. Like, it didn't feel as big as what it probably could have been. Like, everybody had kind of guaranteed, but there are actually a few talking points going into what is going to be a very I would say, very interesting playoff race.
Yes, and one of those, I think, is Barrage that we talked about last week. They'd had a couple of weeks where they'd slowed down a bit, maybe got a bit comfortable. And I think it's 3-1-1
weeks. 3 losses in a row now,
Yeah, so obviously the last one was probably the worst of all, I'd imagine, against Enclave, who, not to bash Barrage too much, Enclave have looked better the last few weeks, and they hadn't looked like a winless team, really. But you would have still, everyone would have thought Barrage would win that game. I guess it was the curse of when you predicted them. That meant that they had to lose.
Well, we all went 2-0 Barrage this week in the last week, and they ended up going 0-2. They were 9. I mean, it's quite easy. I know they're 9-5 now. They were 9-2, and that's a big difference. I think if you can go in double figures in wins, it looks a lot more impressive. But then 9-5 isn't actually a strong record. You know what? To be quite honest, the Enclave game for me. Almost, if they just lost to Enclave, I wouldn't have been as worried. But because they lost to Fnatic the day before and then lost to Enclave, it does feel quite worrying considering next week they are facing Fnatic, I believe, a team which obviously beat them, and then clearly, I wonder if it's just. You'd hope that they just ran out of steam at the end, and hopefully then they can get this mentality back and start winning. And I think that they would need to very much hit the ground running in playoffs.
Yeah.
But coming out of these last 2 weeks, I would say that Barrage look like the weaker side out of the 4.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. And even the fact that, we talked about how Fnatic haven't been as good as we'd expect and what kind of problems they might have. They've ended up second. They've still ended up ahead of Barrage, and Barrage looked the better team for the vast majority of the split.
It was close.
by 1 game, then they've ended up ahead. But it's still for Barrage, that's got to be a bit of a kick in the teeth that they know they've been so good for so long. Yeah, and it was amazing that they looked better than the academy team, but because they've kind of let it slip a bit the last few weeks, they've ended up, then right now they've technically. Score-wise, they're not better than either of the academy teams anymore.
But then you've also got to look at it like this. I think Fnatic second is quite a telling story, but it's also very interesting to the point of they went 1-on-1 with Barrage, they went 1-on-1 with Envision, and then they went 0-2 against BTXL. Yeah. So despite them being second, like this isn't like the worst situation for Barrage, I think, as well. Because this is a side which has gone 1-on-1 with both of these teams prior. So, because I believe wasn't Barrage's victory? Yeah, because Envision beat Fnatic first, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then I believe Barrage then beat them later.
Oh no! I think it's the other way around. I think Barrage.
Was it the other way around?
Yeah, I think Barrage beat him in like week 3 or 4.
Okay. Yeah. But either way, it just shows that both of these sides can actually beat Fnatic.
Yeah, well, you think Fnatic against the rest of the top four, they've only got 2 wins out of 6.
And Envision will be, I think, very much gutted that they aren't facing Fnatic.
Yeah.
But I think then you've got to kind of look at it the other way around, and you've got to kind of say it was quite disappointing from M&M this week. Like going 0-2, they had a very difficult run.
Yeah.
They had to beat Envision and then basically beat Fnatic Rising, or if they just beat Envision, it could have led to some other things. And I think that as soon as Envision beat them, I don't think they were bothered per se about the Fnatic Rising game because they were 5th either way. And so you can't really look at that game, but it was a crucial game for both M&M and Envision, that last game on day one. And Envision looked very, very good.
Yeah, they've definitely improved like week on week. I think Envision.
It's 5 wins in a row for them now.
I think it tells even the fact that they've actually ended up on the same win loss as Barrage as well. So testament to them really for kind of sticking with it. There
definitely seems to be a momentum shift between these two sides, and it does definitely feel like if I had to favour one of them now, just going off form, it would have to be Envision, because I think Envision were always that side which people expected to be good. I think that they've got into the playoffs. If they didn't get into the playoffs, it would have been horrific. I think they would have preferred to have probably valued themselves as second or first. I honestly believe that with the team they brought together, they would have not wanted to have finished 4th. However, they will also be happy with the fact that they were 4-5 before winning 5 wins doing 5 wins in a row. So to get that kind of slow start and finally get something, it's the best way to go. And I think it's better to win 5 games in a row than to have lost 5 games in a row and finish 4th. You know what I mean? Like in terms of momentum, the way it takes you.
The only sad thing, I guess, for them, because I think it must have been their head-to-head with Barrage that they've.
Barrage beat them.
2-0,
I'm just checking now, 2-0. Yeah.
So because of that, even though the same
those games were quite early on as well, I believe.
I don't remember.
It was week 5, and then it would have been then week 1? Yeah, week 5 and week 1. So this was right before Envision's climb. So it would have been interesting to see if they were on the week 6 or the week 7 if they were facing each other, where it would have been. Because obviously we talked about Envision's very poor. They went 0-2 in the first week, and then 2-0, and then I think 0-2 again or something like that. It was very inconsistent. And after that Barrage loss, that is when they won every single game. That is when they beat Enclave,
Fnatic.
They beat Enclave, Phelan, Fnatic, M&M, and Demise. Yeah. So after that.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing with that, even though they are literally level on wins, but being the 4th team means that they're against XL, which.
However, if there's one team to do it, it might actually be Envision. I don't think Fnatic would beat BT XL. No. They've looked a lot better in this week, but I'm actually, I'm going to tell that, because they actually had quite a strong week themselves as well, because they had to face Barrage, and then they had the potential of facing a very strong M&M side. Depending on what the last game was. So it was actually quite a tough schedule for them. And I think they've definitely shown that they are capable. However, I would say if there's one side which could beat XL, it is Envision. And also it does actually give Envision kind of like, not an excuse, but obviously if you lose into the semi-finals, but then you're losing to BTXL, who've gone 14-0, you're kind of like, well, we just lost to probably the best side, which could arguably be seen ever in the UK scene at this point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I guess if you're a team like Envision, who at the start of the split would be hoping to maybe push and reach playoffs and hopefully contend to win it, they know they're going to have to beat XL at some point anyway. So I guess why not in the semis? And
exactly.
If they do manage to beat them in the semis, they're going to have all the momentum, all the confidence, and really at that point they would definitely be favourites, I think, to win it against Fnatic or Barrage.
And I would absolutely love to see a Barrage Envision final. And I think out of the way that the system works, I believe anyway that it's first v fourth and second v third. You never know. BT, because they haven't announced it, I believe. It could be that BT get the chance to pick. And if they do, it could very well be BTXL versus Barrage, because I can't imagine XL wanting to pick Envision. But we're taking it as it's first v fourth, second v third, which we would expect it to be. But to see Barrage versus Envision in the final, this is probably the in the timeline, this is the best way of this happening, because Barrage could beat Fnatic and Envision have a slight chance against BTXL, I feel.
And it would even be...
And it's best of 3, so we don't know what could happen.
Yeah, and it would be... I think it'd be great for those orgs as well, especially that would... If both of those got to the final, that guarantees both of them EU Masters places, I think, and given the coefficients, are straight in the group stage, which I think... Was it when we were speaking to Jeff? I think he mentioned that... I don't know if it was groups, I think it was play-ins, you don't get any prize money, but the group... I think groups are guaranteed
play-ins, you don't get... You get the opportunity to gain prize money, but you get guaranteed money, I believe, if it's in the group.
Yeah, so given that both of those teams would then get in groups, that's extra prize money, would only help the league. Obviously, Fnatic and XL, they've got a bit more money anyway, everyone knows that. So it would be nice for both of them. It would be a nice story as well. And it would be, honestly, quite funny if both the academy teams don't manage to get in. And
you know what? It's fate. Yeah, one academy team cannot make it. It's what always happens.
No, it happened in summer. Both of them got in, didn't they? But
no, because Diabolus got in, didn't they?
Well, I thought that was in spring. I think summer, but I think summer both of them did, and then I think XL, I think they did get out of groups.
Oh yeah. Oh, never mind. Oh,
sorry.
Oh, I don't know why I thought M&M. I know, XL didn't make it out of play-ins, did they? I believe. No.
I don't remember what stage it was, but they went out probably earlier than we'd expect.
Yeah. Anyway, scratch what I just said. And it'd be nice to see no academy. No, to be fair, if we want XL, it would actually be pretty upsetting if we look in the future if XL don't make it to EU Masters.
Because you want your strongest teams, I guess, as well. You want the best chance of actually winning it for your region.
I can't imagine them not. In fact, however, I do believe they're already guaranteed, aren't they? Because the format hasn't been explained. We understand that obviously it's been a little bit more rushed, but we're taking it on for what it was last thing, and I think that the regular season winner gets it automatically, I believe.
Okay.
Because that's what happened, how Diabolus got it in the spring last split. So we'll take it as that. However, it could just be the top 2 teams in the play-ins, but either way, it's highly likely that it's going to be BT there.
Yeah.
So we just got to see. We've got to have to say a little bit about, though, what do you think the bottom 4 sides could really do to propel next season? Now, we don't really know what's going to happen with next season fully, but let's just take it as that we think that these are going to be the 8 sides in next season. There's going to be probably a lot of changes and stuff, which we can speculate. But where do you build from some of these squads? Because M&M, I think will surely be disappointed. We were going to have someone from M&M on, but obviously with unfortunate situations which are probably which are happening with the world right now and everything like that. But I can imagine that it would have gone the lines of they're disappointed not to have got into playoffs, because that is an org which really invests a lot of time and effort, I think, into it.
And it's one that we all kind of thought would be in playoffs. I think that was probably most people's choice for 4th place. Obviously, no one really expected. I guess not no one, but a lot of people didn't expect Barrage to be as good as they were.
Barrage definitely expected it.
So for M&M, in that case, it's hard to think where do you improve, because on paper everyone thought this team was good enough for playoffs. One thing they could do is imagine in their minds, since Pad's their coach, if he stays around, for them just pretend that week 1 is like week 6, and then they'll just start winning straight away and get the late split buff. But it's hard for M&M. There's not many players where they could make clear upgrades where you think other players would be available.
I think it's prime on you have to keep Mummus, in my opinion. Like that guy needs to, unless obviously if he gets a better offer, because the guy was playing in
Yeah.
Brazil second tier,
Yeah, so
I believe.
he
And
got his team promoted, and then
with the team, and then they didn't. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I thought that was harsh. I think that team's actually like second in the first league now. So
yeah, it's
you know,
you can understand it in hindsight, but
but it's very harsh.
And then I think you've also got to think the support Ephias, who was, I believe, at Penguins. I believe who Pad would have scouted him a little bit because he was with Existence in the LVP before. And I think he's been really good. Mm-hmm. I do think that there could be changes maybe with Kamira and Achu and Soft, but I wouldn't say that it was anything where I was like, right. I think all it needed was just another maybe big star in that team. If they had maybe had someone like an Adept or even like a Dan at that, obviously Dan, it's a bit far-reaching, probably saying Dan, but someone like that, it could have been maybe a completely different thing. But I do think it's small changes. I think the coaching staff, I think, is really good. I think genuinely the team itself was strong. There just was, I believe, a little bit more competition, and in other seasons it might have been M&M's.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the general level of UK teams has been a lot higher than the last couple of splits, and put this team in either spring or summer last year, they probably would have been top 4. I would have thought.
Yeah.
So it is a tricky one, like you say. Maybe 1 or 2 changes, slight upgrades could be that the catalyst that they would need. Moving down, then.
Congratulations, Enclave. Yeah. Congratulations, Enclave.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about first what some of the other teams maybe where they could have improved. Below them was Phelan. Phelan was a tough one. It's another one where where could the upgrades come? I think Phelan is one that's more obvious, where there are, like, for example, top lane we thought was going to be their best, would be the standout, and then in a league where this split there was basically a strong top laner on every team. I don't think there was anyone particularly weak.
Yeah,
that he kind of struggled to do that. So I think in that case it wouldn't be bad, I guess, to stick with Beartree because he still is good. He's not a bad top laner.
I would say in terms of and I have to word this properly. But in terms of the quality of the team overall, the only side in top lane where I was a bit thought that they might have been maybe out of the depth was Fnatic with Pride. I think I look at kind of the level of the teams overall around them, and Pride kind of did stick out a little bit. And maybe it's because it is like a different team around him, and Fnatic obviously had their issues at the beginning, but I agree with you. If you kind of look at every other team, you're kind of like, actually, for the level of players which are around them, that the top lane is not the issue.
Yeah.
I think maybe Beartree was very good. Yeah.
Maybe the issue was, looking on paper before the split started, we would have thought if he would probably be one of the standout players, and if he's in a particular role that was probably more stacked than any other role, I would think, then it's hard to be that kind of focal point when it's going to be the hardest place to win from, I think, against any team. So I think maybe elsewhere they could maybe upgrade and at least have the option of different ways they can win around, different lanes they can push for.
Well, I was just having a look now, and obviously the one thing which I think you just got to take into account, and I believe it was only briefly, but there was no person had more than 1 MVP. Now, obviously they'd only won 4 games, but that for me can symbolize 2 things. Either like, is the then standout player? Did they build this team and kind of, maybe expected Beartree to be this carry, but as we kind of realized with how the meta was, it was kind of unfortunate where you couldn't be a top lane carry really, apart from, if you were Kerberos, I think at that point. Like if you look at overall though, with the meta, like there wasn't a top lane carry, and maybe they invested in the wrong player at that point. Where maybe if they had replaced Beartree with someone arguably worse, but then had maybe improved on, say, like the ADC or mid lane or even jungle, ABC in mid lane, that actually might have got them more wins because they would have had more resources on that one player, which could have carried games more. But it's one of those, though, where you're building a team and it's the roll of the dice. Sometimes you can kind of understand where the meta is going, but halfway through this split, the meta could have been top lane carries. And that could have been then a completely different game in terms of if you were Phelan or even Enclave with only Angel and stuff like that. So you roll the dice, and I think unfortunately it just didn't work for them. And 4-10 it isn't a great scoreline. We can't hide that. Like M&M, you can kind of let them off with 6 and 8, but 4-10 is definitely room for improvement. And all these three teams in Phelan, Demise, and Enclave will look at that and think, right, we do need to make roster changes. Where we said with M&M, it's like, oh, maybe just change a little things. It will have to be if we want to compete, then we do need to change these things coming into summer.
Yeah. And then going down, but below them was Demise. Demise obviously had their issues. They've chopped and changed, and I think one thing that they could do, obviously, to improve is to have 5 players. That is the 5 players that they're playing with. I think the weirdness that people swapping roles. They've had 3 people play jungle, 2 people play ADC, and 2 play support. 3 play support. Sorry.
And one of them being an ADC.
Yeah, exactly. Rabstar's played, ADC and jungle. Dragdar's played ADC and support, and it's just it's been a bit of a mess of a split. Let's be honest. But then again, they've had places where they've looked stronger. They have looked good when Kerberos has been able to have these pop-off games and almost sneak a couple of wins with that. And he is one of those. I think if they Demise, you still would want to keep hold of Kerberos. It's not even just the fact he's probably one of the stronger top laners. He's just so different to everyone else. It's just such a different kind of player that they've got to deal with. Which, imagine for preparation, it must just be so much more awkward for other teams. It's like when they say in like tennis, that it's harder to play against Nadal because he's left-handed because you're just not used to it. I think it's could be a similar sort of thing. Obviously, I'm not on these coaching teams, so I don't actually know what the prep's like. But I imagine it is more difficult. You've got to prepare for different kinds of picks, different kinds of chaps. So I'd keep hold of him, but then for me it got to a stage where it was for a couple of weeks. I think they sort of changed up a bit the last 2 weeks, and I think Kerberos, I don't remember who he picked, but the last week or two he was even on some champs that weren't split push champs. But before
which was probably the reason why they very much lost. I have to be honest, but
they had that game. Was it the game against Envision? Yeah, it was where everyone just swapped their roles. Obviously, that was, I guess, just pretty much a troll match. But
at this point, it was that again because of how decided the last day was. You kind of cannot really consider any of them, bar probably the Enclave Barrage game, because of just the importance of it.
Yeah, but I think for Demise, one thing that they could definitely improve on is maybe have more of a backup plan as well, because it kind of felt like at some points if Kerberos was getting shut down or the split push wasn't going to win the game, that was it. They couldn't really do anything else.
I don't think that. So the final form of Demise was Kerberos, Rulchen, Zorian, Dragdar, Zyko. Correct? I believe?
Yeah.
I believe that was the final 5. I don't think that's actually a bad side. The issue is that they only found that side. What was it? Week 7? No, week 6, I believe. Because it was like halfway through week 6. That's when Dragdar and Zyko played, I believe, wasn't it?
I think so. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Either way, it was very last minute, and obviously Rovchen. Then I thought Rovchen was very good. I think Kerberos and Rovchen, and I actually think Zyko in the games which I saw wasn't an issue. The thing which I would like to see if I was Demise personally, and it is a risk, is try and maybe get these 5 players again and see what they're like in the summer split. Give them time to be a team together, because it's very unfair, I think, for some of these players where it's like, for example, with Rolchen, I think Rolchen, for the amount of time which he had, despite him being one of the earlier sub-ins, actually performed pretty well. And so imagine if they'd all actually had time together, they definitely wouldn't have been 3-11 at this point, and they probably would have been around that M&M level, I would say. It's just one of those at the end of the day, but you kind of have got to you've got to praise Demise kind of a little bit, because they knew from the start that it wasn't working. And so they did make changes. However, they maybe have made too many changes and got a bit too got cold feet, essentially. But I would like to see maybe only 1 or 2 changes again for this side, and stick with it, and kind of commit with these players early on. Like, I can't see, if I'm being honest, from an ERL side looking in, I can't see Rolfchen getting another team unless if they are just looking at how he's kind of like how he is in this team. I'd like to see him in another team, and I think he does deserve it, but I just can't see it. It was a surprise that he was a free agent for me anyway, and the fact that they ended up picking him up. Kerberos is probably the only one which I can see maybe a team like M&M, or even like an Envision kind of side picking him up. The issue with Kerberos is that like you say, he plays like a very specific way, and that's probably why academy sides aren't looking at him in a way, personally, because I think you look at kind of their academy top laners in Pride and Sendo, and they are very consistent to a point where they're quite safe. Not consistent, safe, I would say.
Yeah.
Sendo a lot better than I would say what Pride is, but they both facilitate that same role, and Kerberos definitely doesn't fit that. So I'm very interested with Demise next season. Obviously, when it comes to summer, and I'll be very interested to see if they actually do decide, actually, this wasn't the worst roster out of. We weren't the 7th place roster despite being 7th place.
Yeah, it's just funny with Kerberos. He played Cho'Gath last week, obviously, and against Phelan. I was thinking, what? That's not a Kerberos champ. He's playing a tank, and then he's built full AP.
It's like the team's even telling him to play a tank, and he's like, I will play a tank, but I'll play it my way. Like
malicious compliance. Cho'Gath's a tank.
His knockup can do some damage, if you want it to.
True, yeah. But then, you say about at least they were willing to take the risk, because I guess Phelan were kind of the opposite. Phelan only had 1 win more. I guess technically they had a better split in that sense, but they were a team that were clearly struggling pretty much the whole split, and they made 0 changes. So it can go either way. Obviously, you see, it's kind of like, I guess, finding that balance and making sure you're not making changes for the sake of it, but also making sure that it doesn't get stale and you don't actually improve. So yeah, probably a tricky balance.
I just felt like Phelan were consistently a 6th place team. If I'm being honest, where there were points where Demise felt like an 8th place team and then felt like a 5th place team, because of changes they made. And I wonder if it's just both of them had the same output of let's just ride out this season. However, both did it in different ways, in the sense of Demise were like, right, let's try and see if we can figure out something, and you never know what happens. Where Phelan were like, we don't really want to invest heavily, and we'll kind of maybe prepare for next season.
Yeah.
It was 2 different ways to facilitate it, and in the end, Phelan's obviously worked. But it would be dependent on how summer split goes if they do keep some of these players.
And then the only other side outside of playoffs, who is in terms of the last 1 game, they're joint top on the form table, is Enclave, who are not a winless team anymore.
Fair play to them.
Yeah,
like, genuinely. They went for it. They proper went for it, and I appreciate that. And you've got to give this org actually a lot of credit, because the org itself is a staple hold in the UK scene, as a lot of people know. But they didn't take themselves too seriously when they knew that it was, let's be honest, a bad roster at this point. Like there were good aspects, but as a whole, it wasn't a success at all. But they knew that, and they didn't kind of just sulk, and they didn't kind of then flame everybody or get angry when people were saying bad things. But they leaned into that, and they had a bit of fun with it. And you would have to say that probably out of all the like they were definitely a lot more entertaining than what kind of like Feeling were, for example, and stuff like that. I was more invested in Envision games than Feeling games just because of the way that Enclave games and Feeling games, because of the way that they were socially interacting with people and stuff. Like when we were putting our predictions, and they were just like, well, we'll find out which one's correct, and just little things like that is good interaction. And fan engagement is always important, especially in these lower leagues. But to talk about that last game, it's a mixture of both. Like Enclave wanted it, but Barrage just didn't look good.
It's funny as well because we'd mentioned, the kind of rumours about does Wyzek tilt easily, and when they lost that game to Demise, we saw that like mad tweet look like he lost the plot. And then this game, obviously before this week we kind of figured, all right, that's it. They had was it on XL they played the other? Yeah, it was XL.
As soon as they lost to XL, I was like, right, that's it.
And then we thought, that's it. They're done 0-14. And then it comes to this game in Champ Select, they lose 2 bans because Wyzek was like late or something, didn't they say? I don't remember. And you were thinking, oh shit, like, it's really gone downhill, and they won. And even like we talked about how they looked better with Wyzek and Eternity coming in. Still, their bot lane had looked maybe shaky. They looked like one of the weaker bot lanes. And then Der King 8-0 on Ezreal completely shut down Kevo, who's been like one of the standout ADs this split. And it's just, where did that come from? Imagine this Enclave was turning up every week.
It was, like you said, you can take it a little bit of a grain of salt in the fact that Barrage had already guaranteed play-ins, but I haven't spoken to anybody from Barrage about it, but from what I've been reading from Twitter and stuff like that, they did not want to lose that game, and they weren't happy with the fact that they lost that game. And this could be a positive thing for Barrage, and it could help them and say, look, even those can beat us, so let's work hard. For Enclave, though, just the fact that you're not 0-14 means so much.
Yeah.
Like now, 1-13 is still abysmal, but you would be always known as the team which didn't win a single game in the split. And now, like, people will eventually forget that in a couple years, but people wouldn't forget if they went 0-14 at all.
And even that's like a week after they got their first Rainbow Six win, wasn't it? And but I guess that one was like by default, so another team pulled out and they just got given a free win. But this one's even better. They've actually won and played the match. It's crazy.
And I know that we both wanted to talk about the Only Angel, twitlonger.
Yeah.
I would recommend anybody who is obviously interested in the UK scene, who basically listens to this podcast, to look at Only Angel's twitlonger explanation of the season, and the TLDR of it is that basically mentally they just didn't give up, and they knew that they weren't as good, and you could kind of get that sense in this game that they just did not want to be the team on 0-14.
Exactly.
He even mentioned that Cleanser, who was the rookie, wasn't good enough right now, but actually believes that he can be very good. It just was a rough split, and it's a difficult. I think, what did he say? It was difficult because they had an inexperienced mid laner in air, and so it was very difficult for him to essentially come into this team. He kind of needed more experience around him, because Only Angel isn't a massively experienced player. I believe did he take a split off or a couple splits off? I think it was, or something like that.
Not too sure.
But you kind of look at the other players around him, they're not experienced like UKLC mid laners, not mid laners, UKLC players, I would say.
Yeah.
And then obviously Air, he said basically just quit. Essentially, they put Wyzek in, and he was very honest. And Wyzek probably knows as well that he's a strong personality, and that that was difficult in a team which was already losing, but it kind of showed that there is definitely a unity between this entire squad, and you kind of have to give them credit for that, just off that alone.
And it kind of it definitely showed in their games. Like we've been saying for weeks that they haven't looked in the losses. They don't look like a 0
Mm-hmm.
a 0-win team for those last few weeks. They had like the games against like Excel, or I don't. They had a game against someone at the top where they were
No, it was
really quite
Excel
close,
for
so they
like
were really.
5 minutes.
But they were
But that was
putting
every
up a
team,
fight,
I
and
think,
they
at some point.
like these last weeks they looked. I would say they looked better probably than Phelan and Demise, and they looked like they were giving their all a lot more than those other teams as well. So it's kind of, it does make sense, and it's nice to see that honesty, I guess, as well. And it's one of the things that I saw someone a couple of tweets about, I don't remember who it's from, but saying about how the league will grow when there's more personalities and more people sort of putting themselves out there. That's because you think with esports, people aren't usually fans of teams specifically very much. You are more fans of players, and you follow them around. So for a league to grow, you need the players to be popular. That's what people are going to watch for, and it kind of helps that kind of thing, that honesty, putting yourself out there. I think it's really good. I think everyone, other players, even if they're winning teams, can take a leaf out of Only Angels' book in that sense. And
I think from the bottom side teams, anyway, a lot of them seem to be the top laners. I was just running through and I was like, yeah, well, Kerberos is quite a personality. Bear Tree's a personality as well. Mummus is a personality. So that bottom, it's just top personalities. And then you've kind of got Prost there, I would say, with Envision. Yeah. And then with Barrage, it's kind of Haddo, 100%.
Kevo, you keep seeing his
with Kevo as well.
At least in the Twitch chat every time he's playing.
The only one really is, I would say, like Fnatic Rising, in terms of like they've got great players, and Felix though isn't the most like he's a personality but in a different way, I would say, because people just know about him. But I don't.
He's basically he's a meme at this point, basically, just because of like the ridiculous number of accounts he's always got in like the top 10 of.
Well, so I mean, this is not UKLC because we'll kind of run through the split anyway, right? Is he gonna play in the LEC now? It's online. Now, this is the meme, isn't it? Because it's online now. So are we gonna get Felix? Are we gonna get Faker in the LEC just because? I mean, he can replace Nemesis. It's one of those.
You never know.
I would hope so, but I doubt it.
Yeah, well, I think LEC, they need to sort the broadcast a bit for today first. I don't know if did you watch any of that yesterday?
Yes, I understand why people were frustrated, but I was also like, we could have just not got it. And it was like, I remember like season 2, because I wasn't really watching it in season 1, but I remember like briefly watching like old games in season 2 and stuff. And it's like, that was terrible quality as well. And it was just kind of like, took me back to there. There were a couple things like, I don't think they necessarily needed to have like the Photoshop faces when it's an analyst desk and stuff like that. They could have just literally just had an LEC and just put analyst desk. I think it just felt a bit. I could see what they were trying to do because they were kind of building the graphic for when webcams are available. I think as soon as you get webcams though, that'll be easy sort for the analyst desk. And then obviously you've got the audio issues, but at the end of the day, you're gonna get that. Especially when a lot of people are on lockdown. I don't know if you've seen the picture, but Vedius basically didn't have a desk.
His desk,
he's on his cupboard.
Because I think he must. I guess he's gone because he's from Wales, isn't he? Maybe he's like gone back to with his family for a bit, and that just made me laugh so much. It is literally it's like a chest of drawers with his laptop on top of it.
It's just really, really like powerful. I think it's an Alienware. I don't know exactly, but it's just a powerful laptop, and it's just on a cupboard. There's a mic there as well. I love it, but I think it just takes time, and they will. There's a lot of adapting to do. I mean, on the positive note, ERLs don't have that issue at all because ERLs kind of, for the majority of the time, are done online through players. The only difference is casting. I'm not at liberty to say, and I don't really know what's going to happen with the casting in terms of the UKLC, but I can imagine it just being done all online now at this point.
Yeah, well, it was this week, wasn't it? I think.
Yes, I believe. So it'll probably be a similar thing for playoffs and things like that. So, so ERLs it shouldn't really affect, but obviously with big broadcasts like the LEC and the LCS. It'll be interesting, and as soon as we're done, I'll be definitely rewatching what's apparently happening right now.
Never
know. Felix might be playing right now. We never know, right?
And if for any confusion, this is Saturday, like as LEC is going on. So in case anyone's confused. But it's not. It's nice. Like in a world where like everything's getting cancelled at the moment, esports it just carries on for the most part, which is
well, it's like so. My job is doing sports business and stuff like that for journalism for a website, and so a lot of esports news is having to basically start trickling in because in the world of sport, in terms of business, like nobody's really sponsoring a team because there's uncertainty about what is happening with the leagues and everything like that and media rights and things. So like I'm very happy, at least for a little bit now, despite being like self-isolated and working from home, that I'm basically reporting on esports most of the day now. So it's quite nice, and there's little aspects which you've kind of got to take and enjoy, and that's the best thing I think with just the whole situation that's happening is that the fact that we're lucky to have something like esports which can help us and kind of take us away from the world of what is happening right now. I think it's more important than anything.
And it's funny to see like what the teams are trying to do to replace, because they've still got to put some content out, even the real like football teams and that. I don't know if you saw, there's this guy Ibai, who's like a Spanish, was a Spanish league caster.
The La Liga player.
It's great. It's quality, and it's good to see it. Like literally, it was like 24 hours it took for them to get a player from each team to play. It's nuts. Like imagine if Premier League teams could work together.
And then we've also got to look at there's the Leyton Orient Ultimate Quarantine Cup.
Did you see it was
128 people?
Was it? I saw like Tranmere backed out of it because
it's because it's there's
Sun and Dream teams
and things like that. But still, like it for me personally, I can understand why they did it, but they're donating for a good cause as well, so it's kind of, I can understand both sides. But yeah, Bradley Dack, I've got the Blackburn top on. Bradley Dack is representing Blackburn as their official FIFA player today. I think a lot of them have basically picked players, which is just good. And we're going to see a lot more crossover now between esports and traditional sports. There's a NASCAR tournaments now. F1 are doing online F1 tournaments with F1 players now. There's loads now.
It's quality. And there was one that let me down yesterday would have been Spurs West Ham. If anyone doesn't know, I'm a Spurs fan. And Ryan Sessegnon and Mikel Antonio, I think they've got like the same like media company or something that they work
was
through.
this like London virtual thing?
I don't know. It basically they set up a Twitch channel, and they were going to do, because the match got cancelled yesterday, they were going to do it on FIFA, and they were going to stream it. And it was Ryan Sessegnon playing against Mikel Antonio. And it came to kickoff, and it was just like, I thought they'd have like a caster or something at least, or they would be talking over the game. But it was
literally just the game.
It was just, I think Mikel Antonio just streamed from his PlayStation, so even like the PlayStation inbuilt streaming.
And then they don't know. They don't understand
they played one online match just with the game commentary, and then that was it.
Like, they don't understand it. Like, that's when you realise that like there is still a disconnect between traditional sport and esports.
It was better than nothing, and Spurs won, so there's that at least.
All it took was, because Spurs have an official player, or at least everybody has someone for the Premier League. And stuff. All it would took is like a message, like surely. But
because I think the teams didn't set it up. It was this like other this media company that did it, and so it was a bit like it wasn't like a big thing. But it was like, it had like 20,000 viewers as well. Like people actually, everyone got ready for it. And then it was just a bit crap.
I think a little bit of a tangent. Oh well.
Let's go on then to our team of the split. Before we get even more off track. Let's just do it like roll by roll. We'll go from the top lane and work our way down.
Okay.
Top lane, I thought was quite hard. I thought
this was the hardest position.
Yeah, because I think there's a few players that are fairly level, but at the same time there's no one that's properly stood out, I don't think. I've gone for Shikari.
Okay.
Now, he's not one of these kind of carry ones. He's not getting super fed and carrying his team. But I think in terms of the job he does for Envision, I think he has he does his job best of any top laner. He'll never lose his lane. And I was finding some stats to back myself up, so I don't look like I'm talking rubbish. So we know that he's not a carry player, and Envision aren't really playing through him. And while doing that, he had the second highest KDA of any top laner. And then had third highest kill participation, which, considering again he's not expected to be the one carrying matches, carrying team fights. He shows that he has a lot of impact without those resources, and like I say, for his job that he needs to do from Vision, I think he does it perfectly. I think if you were to have to swap out any top laner for any team, I think they have the biggest impact, like the biggest negative impact for anyone. I think he's crucial for them. For me, I put him number one. But again, like I said, I don't think there's been anyone that's stand out in like the carry kind of thing, which is where you usually end up choosing these sort of players.
I had the toss up between three players, and two of them were Sendo and Shikari, because those are the players which I think, in terms of how they've performed the top lane role for the way that the meta is, they've performed it absolutely perfectly to a point. I would even argue probably more Sendo than Shikari, but I could understand with the fact that obviously, to say it lightly, in my opinion, anyway, this is complete my opinion, so it doesn't matter, but Sendo was probably the weakest out of the XL side, if you can call any of the 14-0 XL side the weakest. So this is where I found it a little bit harder to choose. But I went for Mummus, purely because of the way that I value actually having a carry top laner, and someone who was actually not just a carry top laner, but did both roles. I felt that Shikari and Sendo performed this role of kind of facilitating the other teams very, very well. And it shows by the essentially lack of MVPs they got throughout the season, despite them probably playing very well. However, there were only two top laners who got two MVPs, and one was Kerberos and one was Mummus, and I could not put Kerberos in, because Kerberos, despite if you went off most valuable player in the entire league, obviously we'll talk about that later, but I'm talking it in terms of who you think is the most valuable player for that team, you would have to have said Kerberos at Demise, despite them being 7th. But for me, I just thought that Mummus was such a standout player, and the way that I looked at it is, could I have seen Mummus at a Fnatic Rising? 100%. Like, if he was at Fnatic Rising, I think he would have made Fnatic Rising a lot more of a stronger side. And I could even contemplate Sendo and Mummus. And when that even made me think that, I was like, this guy has to be in, despite not actually being in the top 4. I don't think it was his fault really at all. It was more the players around him, but I just think that he was it's such delight to have him back, and he's clearly a quality player who hopefully we get to see in the summer split, but we may not do because another big side might take him.
And to be fair to Sendo, I think last summer was when probably he's been playing at his best, which was the summer where everyone kind of wrote him off and said that he was overrated, and then he came out and he showed that he wasn't. I think that XL team is different now, and they didn't need him to be the player from last summer. With the way they play and they get deadly so fed and let him carry, they don't need Sendo to be popping off like that. So it's kind of a bit harsh on him. He doesn't need to have those games, which would have probably been more flashy, and they would have made him look better and might have got him as one of our picks. So he's not exactly done a bad job.
Too. For me, Sendo is because I can understand why you said Shikari, but I just feel that Sendo just does Shikari's job better in the way that it is. But you can understand obviously you've got to look at it in terms of how they performed in also a team. You would have to say, despite how good Envision is, that XL's team is considerably better, considering again they've gone 14-0. But I can definitely understand. I would say if you had to have the three, I think even you would agree, it would be Mummus, Shikari, or Sendo would be the three. And I just think that for me, because of how Mummus has performed, despite being on a side which didn't even make it into playoffs, was enough for even me to garner actually him being in my team of the split. It will not be the popular opinion, and also I kind of didn't want to have 5 XL players in my team of the split, despite again them going 14-0. But yeah, you've got to have some varieties and spice of life. If we do actually get the vote, I can imagine that a lot of XL players will probably get picked. So
fair enough. And then so moving to the jungle, for me this one was a lot clearer. I've gone for Taxa.
Really?
Yeah, I've got stats for all of them to back myself up, Tom. So
okay.
So Taxa, second lowest gold share of any jungler, right? Doesn't get the resources. He's not the carry. You know, he's not farming all game and not playing Master Yi and just farming and killing everyone. Second lowest gold share, highest KDA. So he's got a huge impact, but without those resources, he's just such a great facilitator. I think for XL, he's got the joint largest champion pool this split as well of any jungler. So it's just like, for a team that is at the top, it's one of these ones where you don't, again, like we were saying maybe with Sendo and Shikari, they didn't have to be the carry. And it's another one, I think, for his job that he does on XL, he's just done it so well, and he just, you know, he allows Special and Deadly and to have those carry performances, but like I said, without all the resources himself, if that makes sense.
I understand what you're talking about 100%. However, you're missing the fact that Dan is also in this league, and that Dan is probably the best jungler, in my opinion, in this league. So he is mine. Here's mine. And you've got all your stats, and this is where if we were commentating, yeah, you'd definitely be the play-by-play, and I'd be the shoutcaster, because I just look at one thing, and that is MVPs. The guy's got 4 MVPs for Fnatic. Yeah, more than I believe he's second in MVPs in the entire split, and that kind of says a lot considering how we've kind of looked at this Fnatic side and been like, this isn't actually a particularly unbelievable Fnatic side. Dan has been Fnatic's best player this split, and he's been better than Magifield at this split, in my opinion, just because of how he's performed in his role. I don't know if he got some of that LEC juice and took it back with him, but he looks more like a complete player than what he did previously. Dan was, for me, always one of those players where, while technically was great, felt a bit like a facilitator again, but doesn't feel like that now. The guy died, I believe. I don't know. The guy's got a KDA of 6.54, which is quite good for a jungler, and it is lower than Taxa's. I agree, but Taxa had Special, had Deadly, and had Kasing in his side, and even Sendo at the points. Yeah, so of course he's going to get that. But Dan was just, for me, the standout player where every Fnatic game I saw, I was like, Dan has hardly put a foot wrong, and he was doing it on Sejuani and Zach, you know, and play and you know and champions like that. He wasn't, and even Trundle, you know, but he wasn't playing like this massive like carry role, but he played it so well. And you look at then Taxa, and it's kind of the opposite. Taxa played like Lee Sin and Java and J4 and Gragas to points, but mainly the Lee Sin. So he had the chance to shine, but still I just felt that Dan was just a better player. So I can understand why you're saying it. And I think, let's be honest, it's between the two.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
And I wonder if it does just come to the point where I actually really value how flexible Dan has been this split, where I do feel like Taxa has, at points, just been a Lee Sin player. I mean, to the detriment of everybody else for not banning those champions and stuff like that. But and Taxa is, again, someone who has definitely stepped up. Taxa was another one I felt in that XL side where people were like, oh, Taxa and Sendo are probably the weakest, blah, 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 blah. But he's definitely, by far, one of the best junglers, maybe not even in an ERL. And I would say that Dan is the best jungler not in an ERL, in my opinion. Not in sorry in LCS.
Yeah.
LEC or LCS, it's fine.
Yeah.
I just, you did convince me a lot with Taxa though, because those stats are very good. But Dan's got 4 MVPs.
Yeah,
For a Fnatic side, which
that's
hasn't
another
done
stat.
very
Stats
well.
don't lie. Yeah, yeah, but I agree with what you say. It has to be one of the two. We can agree on that.
There's been a massive gap, I think. Honestly, out of every, we're going to talk about mid lane in a second, but this role for me, and maybe support, has been the one where I'm like, oh, these two, and then there's the rest kind of thing, and that's unfortunate because obviously we had monkeys in this league. Obviously, wasn't the player we expected him to be. Soft again, you could probably say wasn't really. We expected like if we could get that guy consistent, he could be good, and he kind of wasn't. Maybe you could say Sybil as well was actually probably the third best.
I was going to say when we spoke to Swiffer, he mentioned that he kind of gave the idea Sybil might be the shot caller on Barrage, and if that's right, then he's probably due a lot of praise as well, because that's one thing just from watching the games on the broadcast we'd never realised. But if that's true and he is their main shot caller, he's probably got a big hand in why they were so good, because they were a team that from the first week they just looked so decisive, and the way they moved around the map, the way they worked the objectives was so good. And if he is the shot caller, then you'd think a big part of that is down to him. So from that side of things, he's probably due a lot of praise as well. I'd say I would have given it, as if we were doing like a top 3, he'd probably get 3rd place for that. Maybe Wyzik's worth not actually pushing for the best jungler, I don't think, but an honourable mention, because I think he's been a big part of why Enclave did look a lot better when he joined.
And even like again, like there are good Nolte is another one, I think, as well. I think he's been again a bit like Soft and a bit inconsistent. And that was the worry with Nolte and Soft. That's always been the worry with them, I feel like, is that actually their highs are really good. We've seen it from both of them, but they do have games where they just don't perform, and that's unfortunate. Where you kind of look at other players and for me, there was no game where I actually thought that Dan underperformed, and there was no game where I thought Taxa underperformed at all, and that's what puts them above, I think, everybody else.
It'd be interesting to see if some of these other players, because we said as well with Taxa and not so much Dan, Taxa more, but where his team is so good, it's probably hard to look bad, to be honest. All you have to do is like gank any lane and you'll be fine. So you never know. It's kind of harsh for those other junglers that without that level of teammates, it could be hard to look as good. But yeah, that's how it is, I guess.
Oh, I'm guessing there's going to be a nice graphic of all of our team of the season.
There is, yes.
Oh god, the flame is going to be coming. No, because so far we're 2-0 and I've not picked an XL player. That's going to change.
Is that going to change now for mid lane?
I mean, it has to be special, doesn't it? I think you can even agree on this, surely.
Maybe not.
Oh. Okay, so
you do yours first.
I'm gonna convince you it's special before you've even said something. Okay. I know which the other one's gonna be. Special has been the best mid laner this split. There you go. like when you've got mid laners such as Magic Felix and even like Adept who's an Ericsson who have all kind of shown up. And there's been, I think, a very strong mid lane contingency throughout this entire split. Bar maybe you would say maybe Enclave and unfortunately maybe like Eminem to points. Like this guy has looked just far beyond anybody else and has been the carry for the side, which is again 14-0. So when you're the carry and you're winning those games, that means the carry is doing the right thing. And that means that he is outperforming every single other person in what is, I think, the strongest mid lane contingency. No, strongest mid lane we've ever had in the UKLC, essentially. But go on, tell me why it's Adept. Go on.
It's not Adept.
It's not Adept. Who else could it be?
Ericsson.
Okay.
I've gone for Ericsson. you've done actually quite good, making me second guess myself to maybe it should be special, but I'm gonna stick to my guns, right? Eric's special, right? If you're saying that he's on the best team and he's the carry, then it's easy for him to carry, isn't it? Because he's on the best team.
Oh,
And actually,
but
I've got. Well, we'll go on to ADC afterwards,
Yeah.
but could argue that maybe the ADC is more the carry for XL as well.
Mhm.
So I think Ericsson. It also comes into, and maybe this isn't. It depends how we're looking at it as well, because I guess Team of Split maybe should just be the best player, but I like to, like, why I gave it to Shikari. Maybe he's not on the best team.
Mhm.
He's done his job for his team really well, and Ericsson came in on a Barrage team that obviously they've ended up being quite good, well, really good, but there wasn't much expected from him. I think he was, only a loan from arguably a weaker league, and he's been up there with like special Magic Felix. Hasn't looked out of place. There's been other mid laners that were clearly at a lower level, and he's obviously he's been one of the standouts for Barrage. And I have got some other stats to help me a little bit,
Oh, go on.
but actually one of them kind of helps you a bit more, I think. Actually, in terms of KDA, he's third behind Special Magic Felix.
Yeah, yeah.
But-
so behind the two other
but-
mid laners.
For me, oh well, I've talked myself into a hole now. He has the
Go on.
highest kill participation of any mid laner,
Yes.
so he's clearly helped. Like,
Ericsson
what have I done?
yeah, we understand.
I think I should have gone
right,
special. I probably should have gone with special, shouldn't I?
And
But-
you know what? I can understand, because I'm gonna be quite honest. If
Yeah.
we've only got two other positions, like I didn't have a barrage player in, and part of me is kind of like why? Why was there a barrage player which has not made it into my side, apart from the fact that obviously I'm incredibly biased against barrage, apparently. And maybe a little bit is recency. Probably a lot of it is recency. But I also I actually think Barage's strength was as a team and not as an individual as individual players. Like I would say arguably they've got some of the. We were talking about top laners, like Flare Z as well is someone we didn't even mention. He's been absolutely great. But they've got a top 4 player in each one of their sides, I would say, varying from 4th to even well, this is the issue. Probably not first, but you've had like 2nd, 3rd, and 4th best players in this side, which has turned out to be, which makes them a great side. But for me, when you're doing a team of the split, it's every role. If you had a team of the split and it wasn't. Well, if you had a team of the split, it'd be XL, but still, like, what I'm saying is that there is no, like, I would say,
coach of the split maybe
one.
would be more like.
Yeah,
Barrage,
exactly.
yeah.
But there's been no number 1. But there is a clear, like, 2, 3, and 4 best players in the side, and that's why they are third. To be fair, is because they've got this great team and this great ethic, which I really do appreciate. And to spin it on its head, you can kind of say that then the fact that they haven't got this one standout player and have come third is actually quite a testament to them.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've just got consistently really, really top class UKLC talent in this team is actually quite a good thing.
Yeah.
But go on, are you still sticking with Ericsson? Or are you gonna go?
No,
I'm
gonna stick. Otherwise, I don't have any Barrage players as well. And again, I feel a bit bad. But I don't. Spoiler: I don't have any Fnatic players, and considering they're second, maybe that's. Maybe...
I mean, I did have at least one Fnatic player.
There you go. Let's go on then to ADC. I reckon we might agree on this one.
I mean, for me, it has to be Deadly. Like,
yes, same.
I genuinely, and again, right. The one thing which made me think is I thought, oh, Deadly's won this because he's clearly the best ADC, and then I kind of looked at it. And I was like, to be fair, you've got X-Matty still in this league, and you've got Usa in this league as
Even
well.
Kevo's look really good this
Even
year.
Kevo, yeah. And again, it's a little bit like the mid lane. I actually looked at it. I was like, that's strong competition. But Deadly's he's made them look like chumps at point. I think, honestly,
he's been on the best team for it. In fairness, like they've not been so reliant on him, and XL they've won a lot of games so hard that and Crossfair's mentioned it on the UK after show. In an argument against Deadly in that case, then it proves that he's not, maybe not as good as everyone says.
Mm-hmm.
We'll wait and see if when Envision play against him. So I can't wait for that. But he is able to a lot of the time just sit on his own and farm up. But on the opposite end of that, he's got so much resources going into him, and for a player he's not a rookie, but he's not been around as long as I think the other members of XL. It's a lot of pressure on him to, he gets all those resources. He's got to carry the games when they give him that, and he does.
However, I do think you've also got to look at it in the sense that this guy came in with a reputation, and it's a weird reputation. So despite finishing first in the LVP with Giants, and despite finishing second in EU Masters, like literally last split, he was regarded as the worst player of that side. And he was the guy where it's like, oh, if we need to go late game, we will just have Deadly, because Deadly is just a late game player. That is what the consensus was for that side. If you'd not known that prior, you would not have thought that would have been the same player with what he is for the UKLC. I think he's been aggressive to a point, and you've got Kassim behind you, so I guess you've got that liberty. But I feel like he's showed that there's a different style to play with him than just, let's just wait till late game and let's just see what happens. He's actually been, I think, a very versatile player in his ability to kind of play aggressive. And, I would actually agree with you, at some points be the carry, but then also be like, oh, I'll just play a Aphelios and let Special do the work, the fact that you can kind of mix those and the play doesn't look bad doing it is a really, really strong suit. And I think it's the one thing which does hinder maybe the likes of Yusa, who I think is still one of the best UK talents right now, just in general. It's good that we've got two really good UK ADCs, to be honest, 3 in Xmati. But the one thing which I think I have to criticize Yusa for sometimes is that he's a very, very good carry player, but sometimes you can't just carry in an ADC role. And I feel like when he has to take that step back, it's a bit more difficult for him. Xmati also does that role, I think, very well as what Deadly does. But I just think that, but Deadly's just looked brilliant. And there has been games where they have won because of him. And he's in the best team for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other one I would maybe probably give it to wouldn't really be used, but maybe like Kievo. I think actually he's stepped up so much in the point where I'm like, okay, this guy had his chance at actually a really good side and has took it and looks really good out at the end of this. He would be my second, if I had to have a second, it would probably be him, then Xmati, then Yusa, if I had to decide. I just think that he'd looked very, very good. And again, it's one of those where it's unfortunate that Barrage player didn't get in. I think if we had a second team, there would be a lot more Barrage players going in. And Kevo for me was the second best ADC in the league.
And if we were doing maybe like a most improved, we'd give that to Kevo so he can have that at least.
100%. But let's never give a most improved, because most improved is the worst awards ever. Because it's that could be very much taken as you were really bad. And
it's like
got a bit better.
Yeah, a bit of like a backhanded compliment, isn't it? Let's go on then to support. So I'm glad we could agree on at least one. I reckon support we might agree as well. I've gone for Kasing.
Yeah.
I think we went for Kasing in summer as well. It's just like he's not a UKLC support, is he? And at the same time, last time he was in the LEC, he didn't look maybe like an LEC support. He's somewhere in the middle, probably not being harsh on the UK league. He probably belongs in maybe like a Spanish league or one of the slightly higher ones. Yeah, for me, he is the best
NA.
support.
just throwing it out there, maybe you've got some of these imports in A, but then to be honest, even I look at LEC and I look at SK's. Who's SK's support? The OCE. Is it not Destiny?
No, that's Origins. SK don't have like. Let me see.
Oh,
I want to say like Crown Shot. No, he's ADC, isn't he? What am I about?
Yeah, it's I believe he's OCE. I might be wrong, but is it Limit? Is that his name?
Yeah, Limit. No, he's from not not from Oso. He was in the German league last year.
Oh, was he? But I think that like he's a similar level to someone like that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's a UK player, probably playing in a league which he actually wants to develop.
Yeah. True.
And
And
he
he's
would
a-
have
he's a-
100% had say in picking Deadly or picking most of the
Mhm.
team. I can imagine him being the player where he's like, right, these are the players I want around me.
Yeah.
And
he's a franchise player as well.
oh,
He probably gets
100%.
nice paycheck for that. Like they're not gonna. Yeah, XL aren't gonna be looking to let him go at any point. I don't think. But yeah, in terms of like being back on like Team of Split, I think he's just clearly the best support. Again, it's another one. It helps that he's on the best team. Obviously, if you're a support on a not great team, you might even get a good pick off and things, and people don't follow you in. Obviously, XL, they all know what they're doing, so it's easy for him to look good. But he really does look good. So
it's difficult with so support is one of the hardest roles, I think, to judge. So when you see a support stand out so much, and maybe because of the name value, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
We might have to take that into consideration because you're kind of focusing more on Kasing than what you probably are, or maybe even like a Prosper or a Hado. But you are focusing more on them into the sense of like, oh, it's Kasing, let's see how he does. But he steps up, and he really does step up, and he has made it easier for everybody around him in that side. And I think that's a good support when even like even in the mid lane, he's helped Special get along, and he's definitely helped Deadly, and he's clearly one of like the most vocal players in that side probably, and they seem to always just follow him and follow his lead and know the right things to say. I also said Kasing. I was very close to giving it to Hado though, because I just think that Hado has had a ridiculous split. Obviously went to, I think it was he went to the Spanish league as well. Came back, and I just think that he's performed brilliant since. And he's out of. It's one of those weird things because you kind of look at that Diabolus roster that I guess like maybe the one and done Diabolus roster at this point where you had like Eusta, Hado, Kerberos, and Monkeys. Who was the mid laner? Oh, I feel bad now.
Hold on, let me try and find it.
Oh, we named 4 of them as well. That's a
Krogson.
Krogson, okay. So you kind of look at those 5 then, really. And for me, Hado is the one, and maybe Yusa, and even, well, Clifford. But right, anyway, but Hado, for me, has really stepped up from even that Diabolus side. You could even argue that maybe Yusa was better with Diabolus, Kerberos was better Diabolus, and Monkeys clearly, obviously, was as well. But Hado, for me, looks like more of a complete player, and that going to Spain and then coming back on this incredibly, mismatched but unbelievably good team has helped loads. But for me, you have to give it Kasing. Like the guy was, like I said, I think he was voted it last split as well. He'll probably get voted for it this split, and it's hard to bet up against any BTXL player.
Yeah, definitely. Out of your 5 then, who is your MVP of the split?
So my MVP is Special, right? Which is weird because you haven't got him in your team. But for me, most valuable player, he's been the one where they've mostly carried throughout, and you can't go 14-0. I agree with what you said previously, where it's like it might be a bit easier for him because he's the carry, but then also there's a lot more pressure to execute that. Hopefully we won't see MagiFelix, because has MagiFelix won it every time? I think
he has
might
both
have done.
splits so far, yeah.
So I don't think it'll be MagiFelix this time, unless people just vote. And hopefully they don't do a public vote, because we will literally probably see Magic Felix Sing win, because Special really does deserve it. I think this one,
Yeah.
and in terms of like, he proved himself, I think, as well. This is his chance to have actually just have sat down and played with 5 players consistently, and there's a testament to those players which had stayed in Kasing, in Sendo, in Taxa, and in Special, where actually now they've got this whole side together. They are one of the best sides. Who would you say is your MVP there? I'm very interested with this one.
Mine's another one that you don't have in your team.
Oh,
I
so
actually,
Taxa?
it is, yeah. I went for Taxa for mine, kind of for the reasons like I said earlier. I think and I guess for these reasons, you could maybe even give it to Kasing, but it's about like how he helps to facilitate that whole team. He just, for me, he does such a great job doing that. I think even without having Special in my team, it is a clearly valid, like a good shout for Special to have it. And even I thought about Deadly as well, given that they're the carries, but then you can't carry with, I don't think, without that jungler there that's doing such a great job to facilitate that, and to have 2 lanes that they carry through so like every game. I think it needs a strong jungler for that. So for me, I went for Taxa, and it's again another thing of like just the great improvement that he's shown as well, for that reason too. So it was tough though. If it wasn't
an academy side, then, so say you had a non-academy MVP, who would you give it to?
Ericsson, I think.
Ericsson. See, I would have given it to Adept. So.
And they were, I think, out of the non-academy mids, I think those are like, both of them are cut above all the rest. So. And
I think it kind of shows again, like we've been saying, that like Adept would have been my second, mid laner, but would be my MVP if it was a non-academy included. And just like with you, like Ericsson would be your MVP. It just shows how strong we haven't picked Magifelix.
Yeah.
Like, and Magifelix hasn't played bad. Like you can't say that he's played trash, because he hasn't. He's on the second best team. But it's just been one of those where there has been, I would say, 4 incredibly talented mid laners in our league this season.
Been a bit spoiled, I think, for choice. And
I dread next season. I dread it, because I apart from maybe Magifelix and Special, like there is just this worry of just Ericsson and Adept not being here next season, and it is, unless they go to, I'm happy with them going as long as it's either to NA or NA Academy or to LEC. I don't want to see them in any other ERL. Just keep them all. Yeah. That's it.
Definitely. Let's we could do.
Well, what about Coach? What about Coach as well?
Yeah, with Coach, I think it would have to be, and I feel bad that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Is it Surza, Barrage's coach? I think for me, it'd have to be go to him. Like, coach of the split, you kind of, when I think about those, I kind of always think it ends up being like whatever team has over. I don't want to say overachieved. That's kind of like a bit, like means that Barrage aren't, kind of gives the impression that they're not actually good and they're only they are achieving more than expected. They clearly were a good team, but I think for them to be playing so well so quickly as well, and especially when
to gel as well.
Yeah, and when like you said, that they were one of the last teams we put together as well, and for them to gel so quick and have such a clear identity, and we said it's probably a large part down to Sybil as well, in game at least, but to be able to play so decisively, know where they need to be, work the objectives so well, I think you've got to give a lot of credit to the coach in that sense. So for me, it'd be Barrage's coach.
So for me, it would be Swiffer. Right, because and like you said, it's so hard to judge a coach's like job.
Yeah.
And we are kind of taking like a little bit of just inside information we know. So I don't know about like kind of Fnatic or even kind of like with Envision to a point, even though I believe isn't Prosper essentially the coach of Envision. I might be wrong, but with the way that it's set out. That's what I always thought. But I would have to give it to Swiffer because we knew that Swiffer didn't get to choose these 5 players. He was the last person to come in on in that side, and that must be quite difficult, I think, for a person who, let's be honest, he wasn't a coach before this. So he's come in as a player, became a coach. Well, was a player, came in as a coach for the first time, and has led a team to a 14-0. And you could say, yeah, the side is strong, but there's got to be something which he must have done with this squad, because you've got to think, despite obviously the roster changes, there was only one proper change made in that squad. And so they've clearly found out something and made that.
Yeah, because it's essentially, apart from the change to Deadly, it's 4 out of the 5 players that were never this strong last year. So
yeah,
something's changed, and apart from Deadly coming in, the only other thing is the coaching staff. And I guess it probably helps that they know, like we've talked about it before, that they're not chopping and changing. They know this is the core 5. Probably helps in that sense as well. But yeah, definitely a lot of credit to Swiffer. Like you say, it's his first coaching role, and yeah, let's be thriving so far.
I mean, there's been, and I think you kind of got to look at it in the sense of like Yandro, for example, who I believe he's one of the Misfits. Yeah. Like he obviously performed very well when he was the coach for Fnatic Rising, but he never went 14-0. Or well, you can't go 14-0, but he never went undefeated this season, I believe.
Yeah.
Whereas BT have probably done it in what is arguably a harder league format.
Definitely, yeah.
And so you have got to give him a bit of credit, but it's I could see where you're coming from, where it's like from Barage's perspective, yeah, the coach has been very, very good, and you've even maybe got to give a little bit of credit to like someone like Pad as well, who arguably, if he had got into the playoffs, would have been considered as someone who could have been on that same level as well.
Another thing for Swiffer as well is that I think, even in any league, even if there is a team that's dominating so much, it's still so rare for them to have a perfect split, purely for like the motivation. Like once you're locked in even first, we see even happens with G2 like the last couple of splits in the LEC. Once they're locked in first place and they've got that seed, it's like so hard to.
Or even just now, like even in Spring Split, like they kind of know that they're going to be the best side, and they've basically trolled most
and
of
I remember there was
season.
I listened to a podcast before. It was I don't remember the guy's name. He was a analyst for Team Liquid, like during the last couple of years when they were obviously the clearly best team in NA, and he was saying that the biggest challenge that they have is keeping the players motivated when they know they're the best team. How do you make sure that they're actually giving their all every week? And XL never, not once, even when they've had closer games, it's more the other teams are putting up more of a fight. XL have never looked like they've gone easy on anyone.
And I think you've got to get to the point where, like, so when it comes to like you're 12-0, probably those last 2 games you're incredibly motivated.
Yeah.
But when you're like 7-0 and you still know you got halfway through the split, like you're probably not thinking of an undefeated season at that point, but you're already thinking, oh, we've already qualified, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's more that middle section, and there were games which were scary for a little bit, at least for BT. Anyway, but. Yeah, I can definitely see why you gave it to Barage's coach. Is it Wyzek? Well, not Wyzek.
Not Wyzek. No, it's sorry, I checked it. Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah, Swiffer for me has to have it.
Cool. Let's go on, I guess, to some predictions. I don't think there's any other kind of awards we can give, is there? Unless we are going in like we talked before we started about rookie, but there's not really any rookies that have been that good.
If you had to give it to like newcomer, you can't even give it to Deadly because he played for M&M.
Yeah, so I don't think that's one that we can really do this time around. I think that's all the awards we can give, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, let's go on then to some predictions. Hopefully we are correct in the games that we're predicting, because like Tom said,
if not, then we'll do it on off Discord.
Yeah,
anyway,
we can do
we'll sort it out,
we'll sort it out. So hopefully these are right. So we're presuming that it goes first against fourth and then second against third, which I'm sure I don't know if it was Jeff when we spoke to Tim about Barrage. I'm sure we've heard it. We've been told that. We can't have both made that up in our heads.
It's not been confirmed.
Yeah,
I think they would. I would say that they would have said it would have been different if it wasn't.
Mhm.
So.
And the way it works, so semi-finals are on Monday, and they're 2 best of 3s, and then the final is the following Sunday, the 29th, and that's a best of 5. So the best of 3s that we're expecting are XL against Envision.
Gosh, this Monday, is it?
Yes, the Monday, 23rd.
Okay.
Which is a bit weird. Bit of a change in days, isn't it? And I think even the Nordic final, I think the Nordic semi-final is tomorrow.
Oh, so do you think oh no, so they could have just done Tuesday anyway.
But then the Nordic final is on the same day as the UK final, so I don't know if it's the same. If it's still Orcs and Hitbrain are going to cast it, it's going to be knackered.
They might do it the same. That would actually be pretty cool. That I would actually like that if they did say like the Nordic game first.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. I think
the UKLC, which would be I think quite cool actually.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't overlap because that would then be a bit.
Yeah. No, I think it's like
duo cast.
Yeah. Let's see. Right. So on our predictions, okay. So the way we've obviously been tallying up our points so far. For an update on that, last week was hard. Now, I got 6 out of 8, which isn't that bad. But there were some games I thought were like nailed on, like Enclave against Barrage, that we lost. So it was a bit of a weird week. Now,
what did I get? Did I get 5 out of 8?
Not quite, Tom.
Oh, is it 4 out of 8?
Not quite, Tom.
I did get 3 out of 8. Was it?
You got 3, yeah. You got.
Oh my god!
So you said you had Demise to beat Phelan, and Phelan won.
Okay.
XL to beat Enclave.
The game, it's fine.
Yeah, that was a hard one. Enclave. You had XL to beat Enclave. XL obviously won that. We all had Barrage to beat Fnatic, which didn't happen. You had Eminem to beat Envision.
Didn't happen. Which was kind of
We all had Envision to beat Demise. That was one that we all got. And then Eminem Fnatic, you had Eminem. XL you got against Phelan, that was right, and then we all got Barrage against Enclave wrong. So it was a weird week, I'll admit. So right now the standings are I've got 46, you've got 40, and the guest predictions are on 42. So it's not that far away.
Yeah, so the 6 points. So the way that I think we're working this now is that we get 1 point for the correct team which wins, but then if we get the correct team and the correct score, it's 3 points.
Yeah.
So there is still a chance of us, being in the finals. It could actually. So there's 9 points available, and I'm.
Well, we could have for the final. It's best of 5. It's even harder for the right result. We could.
Exactly.
Let's say for the final, we'll make it 5 points.
Okay.
So for the semis here, there's a maximum of 6 points that we could get. Like we said, 1 point for the right result, 3 points for the right score. XL against Envision, 2-0 XL. I'm going for. We've spoken about Envision look better, but I think XL still look too strong. If it was a best of 5, I might have gone for a 3-1 that Envision might nick a game. But a best of 3, I think it's going to be a 2-0.
It's difficult because it's hard to predict a 2-1 considering XL haven't lost a game. So like you're expecting them then to lose a game. I'm gonna go 2-1 XL though. 2-1 XL because I can see they're the only side I genuinely think which are gonna take a game off XL if there was gonna be one. So and I don't think it's that silly of a prediction to make. Like these are the two clearly, obviously XL, but Envision's the most informed side going into this tournament as well, and BT are obviously informed as well. So they could do something here, and they've got players who have done playoff games to perfection in Shikari and Prosper. These are players who know how to play in the playoffs and play when it really matters. That's
true. I didn't think of that actually. Shikari and Prosper, they don't lose the UK League, so actually in that sense, it should be a 2-0 sweep for Envision, shouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm not doing that. But yeah, I think 2-1 XL. I think Envision will make a good account of themselves in this game, and I don't think it's going to be a stomp. I really don't.
I'm looking forward to the to that bot lane matchup. There has been like a bit of a war of words from Prosper and Kasing, So I'm excited to see if that goes any different this time. Obviously, Excel, I think, well, they definitely did. Excel definitely 2-0'd Envision in the regular season. I was like going to check for a second. I was like, wait, they didn't lose any games. Of course, they didn't take one. But yeah, it'd be exciting to see if that is any different. And like you say, with Envision now in their best form, if anyone's going to put up a fight to Excel, it looks like this will be the time.
Yeah.
Then going on to the second match that we think is going to be the second match at least, Fnatic against Barrage. This one I think
more of a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
And honestly, it's hard to even think which team to pick to win, let alone the score. I think I think it should be I would think a 2-1 either way. I'm not seeing a 2-0. Fnatic. Well, because we said like Barrage have been a bit weaker the last few weeks. But yeah, surely that the Enclave loss should be a real kick up the arse, and they'll
Yeah, 100%. Like, I can't imagine. I don't think we will see the same Barrage as what we've seen in the last 2 weeks. No. I would say.
Mm-hmm. And they've got as well. They got Monkeys, I think, now as well, like a sub jungler. So you never know. Maybe even if they do go a game down, Monkeys comes in, and we've got like the Diabolist Monkeys comes back. Yeah. Who knows? And even just to have, I don't know, an extra voice on there. They got extra ideas around the jungle. Might be a bit of an extra boost to give them as well. I'm gonna go for a 2-1 for Barrage.
Okay.
Mainly because over the split, even though they've dropped off the last few weeks, they've had the higher peak, I think, than Fnatic. If they both play at the strongest we've seen, then I'm going for a 2-1 on Barrage. And I think Barrage should get back to that, because like we said, their motivation should be back. Yeah. They should have that, that kind of the scare they've obviously had against Enclave. At the same time, Fnatic, you never know, NineTeeSix might show his former self. Not that he's been particularly weak, but it's really hard. I think this one.
This is the hardest matchup. Well, clearly, obviously, but it's one of the hardest matchups I think to predict for the entire split, because you've got two sides of who's going to come into this match better. I think genuinely, if you actually have to look at skill through lanes, I would say that Barrage have a better support and have a better top laner. I would say that if on his day, NineTeeSix is better in the mid lane. Jungle, then I would say I would also put as better, and then you've kind of got Yusa and Xmati, who I think can actually be very even. But maybe I would say give it to 3 to Fnatic and 2 to Barrage, but that's still very close in terms of abilities lane for lane. So I think it genuinely does come into how motivated a Fnatic going to be and how demotivated a Barrage going to be. Because if they're not demotivated at all, I think it could be.
Yeah, that's a good point. We said about it might give them a kick up the arse. It could easily have the other effect. If they lose to Enclave, they might be thinking, "Shit, well, we got Fnatic next week. We can't beat the 0-13 team. How have we got to win 2 games against Fnatic that are now above us?"
I do agree to the point where I do think it's a 2-1.
Yeah.
I am going to go 2-1 Fnatic because Fnatic do have this, I believe, ability in the playoffs. Like, they've always performed. So I look at summer, like Fnatic were actually one of the best sides. But in spring, they weren't the best side last season. But in playoffs, they were a whole different level.
Yeah, they wasn't like a 3-0 against Diabolist.
Yes,
final.
Exactly.
Like, Diabolist were the best team before that.
Fnatic have always seemed to perform even better in the playoffs, despite even the situations where they had with Prosper and Shikari. Last season, they still managed to win that split, I believe. Yeah, they did, yeah. So for me, Fnatic have always been that side, which, especially in the UKLC, have looked like a strong playoff side when it comes to it. So I'm going to go 2-1 Fnatic Rising. I could easily see Barrage doing it. And I think Barrage will be very happy that I haven't voted for them at this point, because it seems that every time I do, they lose. So either way, it's a win-win, I guess. But yeah, 2-1 Fnatic. It's weird, because if you had told me at the beginning of the split that we'd just be seeing another Academy versus Academy final, I'd be a bit disappointed. But it's a different landscape than what we were all expecting, I think. And I think that like Fnatic will have had to have really worked for this to have got to this point. And it makes that kind of that final, this academy final actually means something a lot more. And it's the roles reversed. Like Fnatic were always this dominant side, and now it seems that XL are, and Fnatic have got to try and slay them this time.
Yeah.
So it's a different story altogether, and they have had to be, I would say, two difficult sides in Envision and Barrage to do so. But yeah, 2-1 Fnatic, I would say.
Let's see. I think that, yeah, it's definitely the hardest one, that, and should be the closest, I think. And I think that's probably it for this episode then. We might, we'll see, because the final's next Sunday. So we'll maybe do an episode before then, see if we can get one fitted in after the semi-finals have happened, and then we can give our finals predictions. So let's see, and hopefully we'll get someone on. But like we say, obviously we've had a couple of cancellations recently, and at this kind of time with what's going on, it's kind of to be expected. So I did say last time we'd have a guest this week, so apologies that we don't.
Technically, if we are having one, on the week, then
and we can get someone on, yeah. So I might be true to my word in that sense, but don't be too surprised, because I think it is, the world's in a bit of a weird state right now. So anyone listening then, to finish up, obviously thanks for listening. If you're, as always, if you're listening on Spotify, follow on there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter. Our ats are on the screen. And you can follow NineTeeSix at NineTeeSix. And of course, stay at home, everyone, as well. That's another big message right now. And stay safe. Okay? All right. Thanks for listening.